Forgotten graveyards, unexplained presences, and encounters that begin in silence but never really end. These cemetery horror stories will have you questioning every shadow that moves in the dark. Like the one you're about to hear, where a group of teenagers films a video in an abandoned cemetery and ends up capturing something that was never supposed to be there. Years later, that figure is still following them, and not all of them managed to get away. But before we dive into the story, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any of our terrifying tales. And let me know in the comments, where in the world are you watching this from? Some things should never be recorded. Some things need to be forgotten. I found that out the hard way. It all started that summer of 2009 when my friends and I had the brilliant idea to make a ghost hunting video in the abandoned Millstone Rest Cemetery. We were young, foolish, and above all, we didn't believe in any of that stuff. Ghosts? Hauntings? Nonsense. To us, it was just a way to make a cool video with some cheap effects and made-up stories. The cemetery was perfect, old, forgotten, with broken headstones and names worn away by time. Vegetation had taken over much of it, and the tall grass cast shadows that moved as if they were alive. We arrived there in the late afternoon when the sun was weak, and the air had that smell of wet earth and old things. Dana brought an old tape camera because we wanted to give it a real documentary feel. Jake, always the joker of the group, started making scary voices behind the headstones while Tyler filmed everything with a goofy grin on his face. We laughed, joked, and pretended to be scared. It was all one big joke, until Tyler suddenly stopped. "There's someone there," he said quietly, looking toward the back of the cemetery where the trees were densest. We laughed, of course. "Oh, come on," I said, hitting his arm. But Tyler wasn't joking. He kept staring at that area as if he saw something we couldn't. We reviewed the footage right away, looking for anything, but there was nothing. Just the wind moving the branches. We decided to ignore it and kept filming. In the end, the video turned out great. At least we thought so. We posted it on YouTube, got some views, and since nothing strange happened, we forgot about it. The tape was tossed into a box of junk and stayed there, forgotten for years, until last week when I found it again. I was cleaning the attic when I saw the box labeled Old Stuff. Inside, among VHS tapes and old photos, was the cemetery tape. Out of curiosity, I decided to play it on an old TV I still had at home. And that's when I saw it. Something we hadn't noticed back then. In the corner of the screen, among the trees, there was a figure. It wasn't a reflection. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was someone, or something, too thin, with arms too long, as if the bones had been stretched the wrong way. And the worst part? It was moving. Slowly, as if it were watching us. My blood ran cold, because I remembered that moment exactly. And at the time, we hadn't seen anything. I sent the video to the other three. Jake responded with a, "What the hell is that?" in all caps. Dana tried to rationalize. It must be a defect in the tape. But you could tell she was scared. Tyler, he only sent a message hours later. "I told you there was someone there." And then the nightmares started. Every night I woke up in the dark with the feeling that there was something in the room. And when I looked into the corner, there it was, standing, watching. Jake called me 2 days ago, his voice barely audible. "It's in my house," he whispered. "I saw it outside my window." That's when I realized. We hadn't gone after the ghosts. They had come after us. And that was just the beginning. After I saw that thing in the video, nothing was normal anymore. I tried to convince myself it was just a defect in the tape, a weird reflection, anything. But I couldn't. The image was there, too clear. And the worst part? It didn't just appear in the video, I started seeing it everywhere. In the reflection of the mirror when I walked by quickly. In the dark window of the car at night. In the dark hallway of my house when I turned off the light. Always at a distance, always watching. And always with that wrong posture, as if the bones had been put in the wrong place. Jake was the first to really suffer from this. He called me that night, almost crying. "It's on my porch," he said, his voice trembling. "It's not my imagination, man, I swear to God, it just stands there watching." I rushed to his house, but when I got there, nothing. Just that heavy silence and a strange smell like burnt meat. Dana, always the skeptic of the group, tried to stay rational. "It's just suggestion," she said. "We watched the video and created this paranoia." But even she started to change when things got personal. She sent me a message at 3 a.m. "There's someone in my backyard." When I called, she was in a panic. "It doesn't have a face," Dana whispered on the phone. "Just holes where the face should be." Tyler? He just disappeared, stopped responding to messages. His social media went dead. I went to his house and the neighbors said he had left suddenly. But I knew Tyler. He wouldn't do that. Not without saying anything. That's when I found his diary. It was under the bed, as if he had hidden it in a hurry. The last pages were filled with frantic scribbles, the same phrase repeated over and over. "She wants us to go back there." And below, in shaky letters, "She's going to get us one by one." That night, I had the worst nightmare yet. I was in Millstone Rest Cemetery, but it was different. The trees were dead, the graves open. And in the center, that figure. This time, it was close. Too close. I woke up with a scream stuck in my throat and a sharp pain in my chest. At that instant, my phone vibrated. It was a message from Dana, just 2 words. "She touched me." When I called her, I only heard crying and heavy breathing. "It got into my house," Dana sobbed. It has cold hands, so cold." The next day, Dana didn't show up for work. I went to her apartment and almost fainted when I saw the door. Scratched, as if something with claws had tried to tear it down. Inside, everything was in place, except for one detail. The bathroom mirror was broken, and written in the steam of the shower, as if someone had traced it with a finger, was a single word: return. That's when I understood. That thing wasn't going to stop. And if I wanted to save my friends, I would have to go back to the cemetery. The road to the cemetery had never seemed so long. The car could barely make it up the dirt path, swallowed by the tall grass. Every bump made me sweat. I knew it was a terrible idea to go back there, but I had no choice. My friends were disappearing one by one, and that thing, it wanted me to return. When the headlights illuminated the rusted gate of Millstone Rest, my heart almost stopped. The place was worse than I remembered. The headstones toppled. The trees twisted like bony fingers pointing at me. The camera in my hand trembled, but I needed to record. I needed proof. "I'm here, you wretch," I shouted, my voice echoing in the rotten silence of the cemetery. That's when I heard the first whisper. It came from all directions at once, as if the wind itself was speaking. "You took too long." The camera caught something moving among the graves. Faster than last time, closer. My knees threatened to give way when I saw what was written on the nearby headstones. Our names: Jake, Dana, Tyler, and mine, with tonight's date. The smell of rotten flesh filled my nose. It emerged from behind a tree, moving in spasms, those arms too long dragging on the ground. This time I could see its face, or the lack of it. Just a black hole where the eyes should be, a wet slit that could be a mouth. "Where are my friends?" I shouted, backing away. It pointed to something behind me. When I turned, I saw the 3 of them, Jake, Dana, and Tyler, standing among the graves. Pale, empty eyes, smiling. "You should have believed us when we warned you," Tyler said. But the voice wasn't his, it was hers. The camera fell to the ground as they came toward me, moving wrong, like marionettes with their strings cut. The last thing I saw was the faceless figure opening that impossibly wide mouth, and then darkness. When I woke up, I was in my car, the sun rising. The camera was on the passenger seat, the little red light still blinking. With trembling hands, I picked it up and reviewed the last images. The video showed only me, alone in the cemetery, screaming, running in circles, falling. But in the last seconds, as my head turned to the fallen camera, you could see the reflection in my eyes. 4 figures around me, and me, smiling. Now I feel her every night sitting on the edge of my bed, Sometimes I hear my friends calling me from the backyard. And the worst part? I've started to like it. Because I finally understood we were never hunting ghosts. They were hunting us. What a scare. What did you think of the story? What rating from 0 to 10 would you give it? Leave your opinion in the comments below. After seeing that in the old recording, it's hard to say what's more terrifying. What's in front of the camera, or what only appears when no one is looking. And speaking of playing with danger, the story you're about to see shows what happens when a simple game among friends turns into a nightmare impossible to forget. The first cracked headstone should have been our warning, but we were young, stupid, and full of that false courage that only the night and a bit of wine can give. The San Lorenzo Cemetery on the outskirts of Florence wasn't like the others. The older locals would cross the street to avoid passing by it after sunset. They said that if you stayed too late, you could hear voices whispering names in Latin. We laughed, until the game started. It was Matteo who had the idea. "Let's play hide and seek," he said, with that mischievous smile of someone who knows they're up to no good. We were drunk enough to think it was brilliant. The place was huge, full of ancient mausoleums, statues of saints with worn faces and cypress trees that whispered with the wind. Julia, the only one with an ounce of sense, tried to convince us to leave. "There's something wrong here," she said, looking over her shoulder. We ignored her. The game started normally. Federico was it. He covered his eyes, started counting in Italian, and we ran as if hell was behind us. The air was cold, and every step I took echoed among the tombs. I hid behind an abandoned mausoleum, the kind of building that seems like it would collapse if you touched it. My heart was beating so hard that I almost didn't hear the first sign that something was wrong. Laughter, thin, high-pitched, as if it was coming from all directions at once. Children. But it wasn't us. There were 5 of us, and all the voices I knew were silent. My blood ran cold. "It's just your imagination," I tried to convince myself. Until I heard footsteps. Light. Quick. As if someone was running barefoot over the headstones. That's when I saw Luca. He was a few meters ahead, standing with his back to me. "Luca," I whispered, hoping he would turn and shout, "Got you," like we always did. But he didn't move. And then, slowly, his head turned. Not his body, just his head, as if someone had twisted it until his chin almost touched his back. I didn't scream. I couldn't. His body fell to the ground like an empty sack, and before I could understand what had happened, something grabbed me. It was fast. A cold hand closing around my ankle, pulling, as if it had come from beneath the earth. I struggled, felt something scratch my skin, and ran without looking back. The laughter returned, louder now, almost inside my head. I ran towards the gate, stumbling over tombs, my lungs burning. When I finally got there, I almost ran into Julia and Matteo. They were pale, their eyes wide. "Did you hear that too?" Matteo asked, his voice trembling. Julia just shook her head, holding her arm as if something had tried to tear it off. Federico and Luca weren't with us. We looked back at the cemetery. The trees moved without wind, and the shadows among the tombs seemed darker, more alive. That's when we heard it. A long, tired sigh coming from somewhere inside. And then, deep in the distance, a child's voice sang, sweet and chilling. 1, 2, 3, star! And all the lights went out. The darkness swallowed everything. We stood paralyzed, hearing only our own ragged breathing. Julia was the first to react. "We need to get out, now!" Her whisper cut through the silence like a knife. We ran towards the main gate, but it was locked. Not just locked. The bars seemed to have intertwined like bony fingers, impossible to open. Matteo tried to climb, but fell back with a muffled scream. Something had pulled him down. That's when we heard it again. 1, 2, 3. The voice came from all directions now, echoing among the tombs as if 100 children were playing with us. But it wasn't a game. Julia grabbed my arm tightly. "Where are Federico and Luca?" We looked around, but the cemetery seemed to have transformed. The tombs we knew had disappeared, replaced by ancient headstones covered in moss and Latin inscriptions. And then I saw Near the abandoned chapel, two silhouettes standing, motionless. "Federico! Luca!" I shouted, my voice failing. They turned at the same time. Their faces were wrong, as if someone had drawn human features on wax masks and then melted them. Luca opened his mouth, and the sound that came out wasn't human. It was like radio static mixed with laughter. Julia let out a scream. "Run!" We didn't think. We ran like mad between the tombs with those things behind us. The air smelled of wet earth and rotten flesh. Matteo tripped over something. It was Federico's arm, pale and rigid, coming out of a freshly dug grave. "They're herding us towards the back of the cemetery," I shouted. It was true. With every turn, every tomb we passed, the path narrowed, leading us to an older area where the headstones were broken and the angel statues had their faces torn off. That's when we saw the child. She was sitting on top of a mausoleum, swinging her little legs. She wore a white dress, dirty with earth. When she saw us, she smiled, a mouth full of sharp teeth. "You missed your turn," she said in a sing-song tone. The ground beneath our feet began to tremble. Skeletal hands emerged from the earth, grabbing our legs. Julia fell first, screaming as she was pulled under. Matteo tried to help her, but something dragged him behind a tomb. I was alone. The child jumped off the mausoleum and started walking towards me, humming softly. 1, 2, 3. I turned and ran like I had never run before in my life. The main gate was there, inexplicably open now. I crossed it, stumbling onto the sidewalk outside. When I looked back, the cemetery was quiet, normal, as if nothing had happened. But I knew. On the iron fence, small, bloody handprints were still marked where they had tried to reach me. I never set foot in a cemetery again after that night. But sometimes, when I'm alone in the dark, I still hear 1, 2, 3, star. And I close my eyes tightly. How bizarre. Sometimes we provoke the unknown thinking it's just fun, until it decides to answer back. But what happens when the terror doesn't come from a spirit that appears, but from the grave of someone who shouldn't be there? The next story is one of the most disturbing in this video. The smell of damp earth and wilted flowers clung to my throat as soon as I set foot in the Tombstone cemetery. It had been 10 years since I last visited my mother's grave. 10 years of guilt, broken promises and detours just to avoid facing that patch of ground marked with her name. But today, finally, I was there. And something was wrong. The grave looked disturbed. The earth didn't have that dry crust of the desert, those cracks from the relentless sun. No, it was dark, moist, as if someone had dug there just a few hours ago. My fingers sank into the soil effortlessly, and a chill ran up my spine. Who the hell would mess with my mother's grave? I sought out the caretaker, an old man with a hunched back and suspicious eyes, who insisted that no work had been done there. "No burials, no exhumations, nothing," he said, spitting on the ground. "That grave's been quiet since the day your mother was laid to rest." But I knew he was lying. Or worse, he had no idea what was really going on. That's when I decided to check the funeral photos. There was a drone that day, remember? One of those panoramic shots that showed the entire cemetery. When I opened the images on my laptop, my heart stopped. The grave in the video wasn't the same. The headstone was in the same place, the name was the same. But the details, the ornaments, the exact position of the flowers, everything was different. As if someone had rebuilt the grave piece by piece but got it wrong. I returned to the cemetery with a shovel, determined to dig just enough to see if the coffin was still there. But before my shovel hit wood, my phone vibrated. A voice message. Unknown number. When I pressed play, all I heard was the sound of dirt being dug, scratching, heavy breathing, and at the end, a raspy whisper that wasn't human, but I swore I recognized. Night fell fast in Tombstone, and I couldn't bring myself to leave. I sat in my car staring at that damned grave until the moon was high in the sky. That's when I saw her. A crouched figure, digging with bare hands, fast, frantic. When it turned, Its eyes shone like glass in the dim light, and its mouth opened into a smile too wide, full of teeth that were anything but human. The next second, it was gone. Only the hole in the ground remained, fresh as if something had just been pulled out of the earth. And I knew with every fiber of my being that whatever was in that coffin, it wasn't my mother anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my car, staring at that dug-up hole in my mother's grave, while the wind howled between the headstones. When the sun finally rose, I was already pounding on the caretaker's door again. This time, I didn't accept excuses. The old man tried to brush me off again, but when I showed him the drone photos and the voice message, he changed. His eyes grew nervous, and he started to sweat. That grave shouldn't have been used, he confessed quietly, as if afraid someone might hear. But the town needed space and, well, sometimes we reuse. Reuse. The word echoed in my head like a gunshot. Was he telling me they had buried someone else on top of my mother? That her coffin now had company? But it didn't make sense. The grave in the video was different, as if everything had been moved. That's when I remembered the old owner of the land. Before it was a cemetery, that patch of earth had been an abandoned ranch, and old McReady, the last heir, still lived nearby. If anyone knew the secrets of that ground, it was him. McReady was a living skeleton, all skin and bones, with eyes that looked like they'd been shot through with 2 bullets. When I mentioned the grave, he laughed, a dry sound like cigarette and whiskey. "Marked twice," he said. "Some graves there have 2 names, 2 bodies, sometimes 3. He told me that back in the 1800s, that patch of land had been used for hasty burials. Victims of fever, gunslingers, people with no family. And when the official cemetery came along, no one bothered to check what was already there. I went back to the grave with an exhumation team, 2 tough guys who clearly thought I was crazy. But when their shovel hit the coffin and we lifted the lid, nothing. Empty. Just dirt and a sour smell, like rotten meat. That night, my phone rang again. This time it was my sister. She was in a panic. "I dreamed about Mom," she said, her voice trembling. She was lost, asking why they took her away, why they put something else in her place. I hung up the phone and looked out the window. Out there in the dark, my mother's grave seemed to move, as if something was crawling beneath the earth, waiting to get out. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a shovel, a flashlight, and went back to the cemetery that very night. If there was something under the earth, I was going to find out what it was, even if it cost me my sanity. The moon was covered by clouds when I started digging. Each shovelful of dirt I threw aside seemed wetter, more alive, until my shovel hit something solid. It wasn't wood, it was stone. A broken headstone buried nearly a meter deep. When I cleared the dirt, I saw the name, Eleanor Graves, 1862-1889. And below, in smaller letters, should never have been opened. That's when I heard the noise. Something was scratching at my mother's coffin from the inside. It wasn't my imagination. It was a dry, metallic sound, like nails on rotten wood. My heart raced, but I couldn't stop. I forced the shovel under the coffin lid and pushed until it gave way with a creak. Inside, it wasn't my mother. It was her, the figure I had seen digging. Now, under the flickering light of the flashlight, I saw her decomposed face, her skin clinging to her bones like wet paper. Her eyes, black and lifeless, fixed on me, and her mouth opened into a smile too wide. "Thank you," she whispered, in a voice that wasn't human. "You've freed me." Before I could run, the earth around the grave began to tremble. Skeletal hands emerged from the ground, grabbing my ankles, pulling me down. I screamed, fought, but it was too late. The last thing I saw was the figure climbing out of the coffin as I was dragged inside. And then the earth closed over me. The next day, the caretaker found my mother's grave intact. The earth, smooth as if nothing had happened. But if you pass by there at night, you might hear something. A scratching coming from beneath the earth. And if you look closely, you'll see that the soil is slightly disturbed, as if something is trying to get out. Creepy, right? After everything he uncovered in that cemetery, There's no way you walk away unchanged. But what if the thing haunting you isn't buried, but walking among us, following a child, like it wants something no one else can see? That's exactly what happens in the next story. Before we get into it, if you've made it this far, that probably means you're enjoying the stories. So hit that like button to let YouTube know you want more content like this, and so you never miss another terrifying tale. The first time Emma mentioned Eliza, I thought it was just another one of those imaginary friends that every child has. But when she described her friend's grave with details no 7-year-old should know, that's when my blood ran cold. I was in the middle of breakfast when Emma, my niece, dropped this like it was the most normal thing in the world. Eliza lives in the cemetery behind the old church. She says it's cold and dark there, but she likes it when I visit. My sister Sarah almost spilled her juice. "What cemetery, Emma? You've never been to a cemetery?" she said, trying to hide the tremor in her voice. Emma just shrugged, chewing her cereal. "It's Maple Grove. Eliza has lived there since before I was born. She has a white tomb with stone flowers and a broken angel. Her name is written in golden letters, Eliza Thorne." Sarah and I exchanged a glance. Maple Grove was an old cemetery on the other side of town. Neither of us had taken Emma there, let alone talked about tombs or broken angels. Sarah tried to rationalize it. Oh, she must have seen it in some movie. But I couldn't swallow it. There was something about the way Emma spoke as if she were describing a place she knew too well. I decided to investigate. The next day I took the car and went to Maple Grove. The place was eerie, one of those old cemeteries with twisted trees and tombstones so worn you could barely read the names. I walked through the rows looking for any tomb that matched Emma's description, and then, there it was. In the farthest corner, half hidden under the shadow of a willow tree, a white tomb with faded stone flowers. The angel on top had its right wing broken, and the golden letters still shone faintly. Eliza Thorne. 1898-1905. Rest in peace, little soul. My stomach turned. How on earth did Emma know this? I went home with my head spinning, trying to find a logical explanation. When I arrived, Sarah was pale. "Emma said Eliza came to visit her today," she whispered. She described a girl in a white dress with dark hair and lifeless eyes. That night I heard knocks on the hallway door. 3 light knocks, as if someone was trying not to make noise. Emma, who should have been sleeping, appeared in my room with a strange smile. "It's Eliza, she's here." I almost fell out of bed. "Emma, this isn't funny," I shouted, but she just shook her head. "It's not a joke, Uncle. She's outside. She always comes when it gets dark." I grabbed a flashlight and searched the entire house. Nothing. But when I returned to Emma's room, I saw something that made my hair stand on end. The window was slightly open, and a trail of damp earth led to her bed. The next day, I installed a camera in Emma's room, hidden behind a stuffed animal. If something was happening, I was going to find out. The first nights were normal, until, on the 3rd night, something appeared in the footage. Emma woke up in the middle of the night, sat on the bed, and started talking to the void. The camera caught a figure quickly passing behind her, as if someone had hidden in the corner of the room. And then, in the last seconds of the recording, a pale hand appeared in the frame, grabbing the edge of Emma's bed before the video cut out. I showed the footage to Sarah, and she almost fainted. "We need to get Emma out of here," she cried. But it was too late. The next morning, Emma was gone. We searched the entire house until we found her in the backyard, sitting on the grass, staring into nothingness. "Eliza took me to see her place," she said, as if she had been to the park. "She wants me to stay with her." But I said not yet. Sarah was in a panic. I went back to the cemetery, not knowing what to expect. And there, on Eliza's tomb, was a red ribbon tied to the cross, the same ribbon Emma used to wear in her hair. When I returned home, Emma was back to normal, or almost. She stopped talking about Eliza. But now every night she stares out her bedroom window, as if waiting for something. And I still haven't had the courage to watch the rest of the recordings from that camera, because one thing is certain, Eliza Thorne is no longer just an imaginary friend, and she's not leaving anytime soon. I thought the worst was over, but when Emma started whispering with the window closed, I realized Eliza had no intention of leaving. After I found the red ribbon on the tomb, everything changed. Emma stopped talking about Eliza, but her silence was worse. She would spend hours staring out the window, as if something out there was calling her. And sometimes I swore I heard faint laughter coming from her room when no one was there. Sarah was at her limit. "We need to do something." She pulled me into the kitchen one night, her eyes filled with tears. "She doesn't sleep, doesn't eat right, and those noises..." She didn't need to finish. I heard them too. Drags in the hallway, taps on the window, things falling by themselves. The house had a heavy energy, as if the air was charged with something wrong. I decided to watch the rest of the camera recordings. What I saw left me with my nerves in tatters. On the very night Emma disappeared, the camera caught something impossible, the window opening by itself, and a pale figure in a white dress entering the room. Eliza wasn't a mirage. She was there, hand in hand with Emma, whispering something in her ear before both disappeared from the frame. And the most terrifying part? When they returned, Emma's feet were dirty with soil, and she was smiling. The next day, I went to the town library, looking for anything about Eliza Thorne. What I discovered gave me chills. Eliza had died in 1905 at the age of 7, drowned in the river behind the cemetery. They said she appeared to other children, inviting them to play, and all those who accepted the invitation disappeared for a few hours. Some were never the same afterward. When I returned home, Sarah was hysterical. "Emma is gone again." This time, she wasn't in the backyard. We ran to the cemetery, and there she was, sitting on Eliza's tomb, humming an old tune. "She wants me to stay," Emma said without looking at us, "but I said I would only go if she lets you come too." Sarah grabbed Emma and we ran out of there. That night, we locked all the doors and windows. I even put salt at the entrances, an old superstition. But when I woke up in the middle of the night, the house was too silent. I went to Emma's room and almost screamed. The window was open, and Eliza was there, standing in the garden, staring fixedly at me. Her eyes were empty, but her smile was hungry. Emma was sleeping deeply, holding something in her hand, an old broken porcelain doll I had never seen before. The next day, Emma woke up different. "Eliza said she's leaving," she announced at breakfast, as if it were good news. But her smile was strange, too wide. And when she turned her back, I saw it. On her back, under her pajamas, something moved, as if something else was beneath her skin. Sarah didn't notice, but I knew. Eliza hadn't left. She had just found a way to stay. What a horror. What did you think of the story? What rating from 0 to 10 would you give it? Leave your opinion here in the comments. I should have never taken that job at Blackwood Cemetery. But after Grandma passed away, money was tight, and Old Man Henderson offered a decent wage to tend to the graves over the summer. "It's easy," he said. "Just clean the headstones, arrange the flowers, and sometimes help close a grave." It sounded simple enough. Until the first day. The place was beautiful, in a macabre sort of way. Old trees bent over the graves, the wind whispering names off faded headstones. But there was something off about it. It wasn't just the silence. It was the kind of quiet that weighed heavy, like the air was holding its breath. And the crows, always there, watching. They never cawed, just perched, as if they knew something I didn't. It was on the third day that I saw the man and the dog. I was tidying up a grave near the old section when I heard footsteps. A tall guy in a black coat, despite the heat, walked slowly among the graves. A scruffy yellow mutt followed him, sniffing the ground. I thought it was odd because there was no car parked nearby, no one around. When I turned to ask if he needed help, they vanished. 1 second they were there, in the middle of the path, and the next, poof, gone into thin air. I thought it was the heat playing tricks on me, until the deer appeared. It was a white creature, almost translucent. with red eyes that glowed in the twilight. It moved slowly as if it knew every inch of the place. I had never seen an albino deer in the area, let alone inside a cemetery. It stopped in front of a specific grave, one of those ancient ones with a broken cross, and stared at me. It wasn't the look of an animal. It was intelligent, calculating. Then it disappeared among the trees, leaving only a trail of cold behind. That's when the noises started. I was sitting in my pickup truck eating a sandwich when the old excavator, the one Henderson left rusting near the fence, suddenly roared to life. A grinding metal noise, as if someone had started the machine after years of disuse. But there was no one there. The engine didn't even work anymore. I got out of the truck, sweating bullets, and went to check. The closer I got, the louder the noise became, until out of nowhere, it stopped. Everything went silent again, just the wind and the pounding of my heart. That night, I decided to leave early, but something made me look back. She was there. A woman in a white dress wandering among the graves as if searching for something. Her hair covered her face, but I knew she wasn't alive. The way she moved, broken, awkward, as if her bones no longer obeyed her. And then, she stopped and turned to me. I didn't wait to see more. I jumped into my truck and sped away, holding my breath, my hands shaking on the wheel. At that moment, I already knew. Blackwood Cemetery wasn't asleep, and it had just woken up. In the following days, I avoided staying at the cemetery after sundown. But even during the day, the place wasn't the same. The air grew heavier, as if an invisible mist hung over the graves. And the crows. Now they followed my steps, perching on the headstones I cleaned, watching. Old man Henderson noticed something was wrong. "You look like you've seen a ghost, kid," he said, frowning. I didn't tell him anything. Who would believe me? But he himself seemed nervous. "Strange things have been happening here lately," he confessed, lowering his voice. "Yesterday I found the chapel door open, and it's been locked for years." That's when the dream started. Every night I saw the woman in white. She didn't chase me, didn't touch me. She just stood at the foot of my bed in that dirt-stained dress, murmuring something I couldn't understand. I would wake up with my heart pounding, the sheets drenched in sweat. And worse. Sometimes I felt something in my room. A weight in the air, a smell of damp earth and dead flowers. I decided I needed to find out what was going on. If the cemetery was haunting me, I at least wanted to know why. I went back to the old section where I had seen the man and the dog. The headstones there were so worn that the names were barely readable. But one caught my attention, a small, tilted one, with a single word still visible. Eleanor. It was the same grave where the albino deer had stopped. I dug a little with my hands. Not much, just enough to see if there was anything strange. And there was. A piece of white cloth, buried shallow, almost as if someone had hidden it in a hurry. When I pulled it, there was a snap, and suddenly the wind turned icy. The crows screamed. A voice whispered my name so close that I turned, expecting to see someone. Nothing. Just the empty cemetery, the sun low in the sky. But now I knew. I had disturbed something I shouldn't have. That night the woman returned. This time she didn't just stand there. She came closer, and for the first time, I heard what she was saying. "You found her." The alarm clock saved my life. I woke up screaming, with the sensation of icy hands around my neck. But when I looked in the mirror, purple finger marks were already forming on my skin. The cemetery didn't just want to scare me. It wanted me to come back. There was no more running away. The marks on my neck wouldn't fade, and the dreams only got worse. Even my house wasn't safe anymore. Things moved in the dark. Whispers came from empty corners. The cemetery had marked me, and now I knew. Eleanor wanted something from me. I went back at night with a flashlight and trembling hands. The gate creaked like a moan as I entered. The wind blew hard, carrying dry leaves in whirls between the graves. And there, in the middle of the path, was the albino deer. This time it didn't run. It just turned and started walking, as if it wanted me to follow. It led me to the abandoned chapel. The door, which Henderson swore was locked, was wide open. Inside, the air smelled of mold and something else. rotten flesh. The flashlight illuminated broken pews, cobwebs, and on the altar, an open coffin. My feet seemed glued to the floor, but I had to look. As I approached, the flashlight flickered. Inside, there was no body. Just that same white cloth, now stained with dirt and something dark. And then I heard footsteps behind me. It was her. Eleanor didn't float, didn't have empty eyes. She looked real, almost alive. Only the way she moved, awkward and wrong, betrayed what she truly was. Her lips parted, and her voice came out raspy, as if from far away. "You meddled where you shouldn't have. Now you're going to fix it." The albino deer appeared behind her, its red eyes fixed on me. And then I understood. It wasn't an animal. It was a guardian. Something ancient trapped in this game between the living and the dead. Eleanor pointed to the coffin. "She escaped. Bring her back." That's when I heard the bark. The yellow dog from the first day emerged from the shadows, growling at something behind me. When I turned, I saw another woman, just like Eleanor, but with a clean dress, her face desperate. She reached out to me and whispered, "She killed me. Don't let her get me again." The flashlight fell. In the dark, I heard the deer snorting, the dog growling, and Eleanor's uneven footsteps approaching. Something grabbed me. I don't know if it was the fleeing woman, the dog, or sheer terror, and I ran. I ran as if hell itself was behind me. The cemetery gate slammed shut with a bang as I left. I never went back. Henderson told me later that they found a destroyed coffin in the chapel and an ancient grave violated, that of Eleanor Graves, who died in 1887. No one knows who opened it or why, but I do. Sometimes in the silence of the night, I still hear distant barks, and I dream of a deer with red eyes watching, waiting. Because open graves never stay empty for long, and one day someone will have to pay for it. After everything he went through in that cemetery, one thing's for sure: some places just don't want to be revisited. If you're still here with me, it means you feel that same dark curiosity that runs through every story we tell. So go ahead and subscribe to the channel to keep hearing these accounts, the kind people don't usually talk about out loud. Drop a comment that says, "Cursed Cemetery," so I know you stuck it out till the end. And if this video got under your skin, hit that like button. It helps more than you think and tells me it's worth bringing more of these stories to you. There's another video right here that keeps the same chilling vibe. Click it and stay with me. Who knows, maybe one of those stories is already looking for you.